What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Whales and Locks. In today's video, we're going to be looking at 3 teams that are seeded 4 or higher entering this NCAA tournament that I ultimately think will lose in the first weekend. So I'll go ahead and explain why, though. So the first team I'm going to look at, it's going to be a shocker. It's the Baylor Bears. This Baylor team has just not been the same team that we saw pre-COVID. Baylor pre-COVID was 17-0. It was beating Big 12 opponents by an average of 18.7 points a game, while only playing in 2 games all season that resulted in a single-digit margin. Post-COVID, though, these guys are a completely different story. 5-2 only, and in their 5 victories, they were only won by a margin of 8.4. Baylor lost to Kansas and Oklahoma State since their pause. 2 teams they beat pre-COVID, where they beat Kansas by 8 and Oklahoma State by 15. Much of Baylor's struggles can be attributed to the defensive end. On the defensive end this season, Baylor allows just 66.4 points per game. Sounds like a great defensive team, as they even rank 7th in adjusted defense according to KenPom. But this defense has been so much worse post-COVID. Over their last 7 games, they're allowing 75.1 points a game. And 2 of these games they played against were against Kansas State and Iowa State, probably the 2 worst offensive teams in the Big 12. With all this being said, you may ask, okay, but still, why could they lose first weekend? They would either play Wisconsin or North Carolina in the first round, or second round. Wisconsin, I don't think can beat Baylor. No way. But North Carolina, on the other hand, completely different story. In terms of Baylor's big men, none of them stand taller than 6'10", and their one who plays the most, Mark Vital, stands at 6'5". I think this is a potential nightmare matchup down low here for Baylor, as North Carolina has 4 bigs who can all score and rebound, who all stand 6'10" or taller. I just think North Carolina can win this game on the glass, and that mixed with Baylor's inability to defend well lately makes this team a candidate, in my opinion, to be knocked out here in the first weekend. So that's my first team in Baylor Bears. The second team we're going to talk about is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa as a team is much improved defensively. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Early in the season, it did seem like Fran McCaffrey had never taught defense in his life, however, as they were allowing 70s and 80s every single night. They would still win, however, with their offense. While Iowa's defense is much improved, there are 2 things that scare me here for Iowa defensively. Number 1 is Jordan Bohannon, the point guard. He has such an inability to guard anyone. He cannot guard his position for his life. And who could Iowa possibly see in the second round? Oregon. Oregon has elite guards in Chris Duarte, LJ Figueroa, and Will Richardson. So really, whichever one of those guys is being guarded by Bohannon should have an absolute field day. The second issue, Luka Garza. Trying to sprint back on defense for him is a struggle, and have to guard a big man who can shoot threes. Luka Garza is not the most fleet of foot big man in the country by any stretch, and he will likely be going against Eugene Amuruyi, who is certainly quicker than Garza as a big man and can help stretch the floor against Garza, as he shoots 38.4% from 3 on the season. The one guy to watch in this game that could ultimately foil Oregon's upset opportunity is Joe Wieskamp for Iowa. If he gets it going from behind the arc, good luck, Oregon. Overall, though, Jordan Bohannon and Luka Garza having massive mismatches when they're on defense makes this Iowa team, I think, a candidate to be knocked out in the first weekend. So the third and final team I'm going to talk about is the Virginia Cavaliers. Personally, I think these guys are a first round and out type of team, and I'll explain why. There's a few things at play here working against Virginia here in this matchup. The first and most obvious one is Virginia's COVID pause. They were put on pause after their win against Syracuse in the ACC tournament due to a player testing positive. I don't believe we know who the player is yet, but right now Virginia will be without a rotational piece for at least this first game. As we've seen throughout much of college basketball, when teams return from COVID, they're often a mess. Just look at Baylor as Exhibit A, almost losing to Iowa State in their first game back, and then getting smashed by Kansas. So that's the first thing. The second part is Ohio's point guard, Jason Preston. When it comes to March, star power wins out in this tournament, and that's exactly what I think will happen here in this first round matchup. The man's averaging 16 points a game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and almost beat Illinois early in the season, losing on an attempted last-second shot that didn't ultimately fall. Also, who's going to guard Jaden Preston? Kihei Clark? I'm not sure how they're going to find a player that will be able to match up with him effectively, as this Virginia defense is certainly not of the caliber that we see in years past. Typically hovering around a number 1 in adjusted efficiency defensively, according to KenPom. This current roster sits at number 33 in adjusted defense. So overall, Virginia's inability to play as quality of defense in years like they did in years past, as well as having to go up against one of the best players in this tournament, where players like him thrive, as well as having to come off a long COVID pause, ultimately make this Virginia team a candidate to, I think, lose and ultimately in this first game in their NCAA tournament push. So there you have it. 3 teams who I think will be leaving Indy by at least the end of the first weekend. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you did enjoy this content and would like to see more things like this in the future, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.